Well, let's move on now to the issue of The Voice, which has, of course, dominated the news cycle for the past 24 hours. After months of waiting and speculation, the PM finally yesterday, flanked, of course, by Indigenous advocates and supporters, announced the wording which will be put to Australians at an election sometime between October and December this year. Now, no matter where you sit on The Voice, yesterday was historic and the Prime Minister's emotions proved that, even if it was a little self-indulgent. But the fact remains that Anthony Albanese is pushing this vote while keeping critical and important details hidden. Well, to discuss all of this now, joining me is former Labor Minister and one of the leaders of the No campaign, Gary Johns. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Caleb.
Now, we finally know the wording of this voice question. What did you make of the final wording as it was announced yesterday?
Well, it's extraordinary. I mean, one of the people who helped draft this whole thing, Professor Craven, thinks it's worse than he could ever have imagined. What he means by that is that he and others started on a path to recognise Aboriginal people in the Constitution without upsetting the Constitution. He has proved that is impossible. This draft, in fact, just about any draft, will massively upend the way we do politics in Australia. It's a crude grab by a group of people to have their voices privileged beyond every other Australian. So we're not very happy about it, I can tell you.
And I mean, a warning like that from Craven, and he's continued that today with a column in The Australian after his comments on radio yesterday. I mean, a warning from a bloke like him who was a supporter of The Voice, helped work on The Voice, gave advice that was clearly not taken into account. I mean, it's not unfair to ask the question, what is the end game here when one of the main architects is now saying, no, this is wrong?
Yeah, well, the end game is clear, and the Prime Minister has said so. He wants to deliver this thing called the Uluru Statement in full, which is not just The Voice, it's treaty making and what has become known as truth-telling, which, as we all know, will be one side of the truth of the experience of Aboriginal people after the Europeans arrived. Now, that's a big package, and I can tell you the last bit. The truth is that most Aboriginal people are doing about as well as all other Australians. There are about 20% of Aboriginal people who are not. Now, if this is a discussion about helping the last 20% to find their way in the modern world, why do we need another committee, in this case 24 professional Aboriginal CEOs, who will go to Canberra and simply ask for more money for their organisations? Organisations, I might say, that have been running for 30 and 40 years, which don't seem to have solved anything. So it is a really bad piece of politics. And the thing about the yes cases, they don't even pretend that they have an instrument to help the last 20%. They simply say, if you don't give us our voice, then you're naughty or you're racist or whatever. Clearly, we are not. We know a very great deal about the problems of those 20%. Most of our board are in fact Aboriginal people, and the one thing they know is their personal journeys have been successful. Not easy, but successful. So it's the successful Aborigines, the 80% who in fact hold the key to the door to the 20%. We don't need a committee of 24 to tell us those truths.
Oh, but Gary, I mean, we were told by Linda Burney that The Voice was the cure for all ailments. Remember, she said we wouldn't have any of these problems in Alice Springs if we had The Voice. But I mean, obviously what was missing from Albo's press conference yesterday was any announcement about legal details, and that's what Craven's been talking about. It's what Warren Mundine has warned about today, that, you know, we could potentially end up with more than a decade of litigation over all of this. Why won't the government release the advice from the Solicitor General?
Because it knows it'll be damning. In fact, you'll probably have picked in the last 2 weeks, I think, that those who were once arguing that there would be no challenges in court suddenly began to argue that of course there'll be challenges in court and that's a normal event. Well, there will be challenges, they will be deep and lengthy, and they will gum up government and interfere with government. This is a devilish thing to do.
Gary, thank you for joining me tonight.